Hello, fam. We will get started in a few moments. Posted a link to our agenda. If you have any new items, opens you'd like to add, please do so in the open section. If we have any of our sub-project leads that want to give an update on their initiatives, please key that in. And we'll get started a few minutes after the hour. Why, yes, today is pie day. I forgot all about that. Go out and get yourself some pie later today.
Should I circulate the draft CFP thing just to make the group aware of that? Yeah, okay,
Yes,
I could add that as an open.
All right, team. It is 3 minutes after the hour. Welcome to the Pi Day gathering of the best working group in the OpenSSF. First and foremost, do we have anyone that's interested in helping us take notes today, please? Please.
I can do it.
Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate that. All right. With that out of the way, do we have any new friends that wanted to introduce themselves and say hello today?
Hi, I'm Nell Shamrell Harrington. I'm a principal engineer at Microsoft, and I am leading the hopefully soon to be official the Memory Safety SIG, and we'll be presenting later today.
Awesome. Welcome, Nell. Any other new friends that wanted to say hello? All right. As always, please add any opens in the open section like Dan did about the workshop. First off, I wanted to let everybody know the Governing Board TAC Governance Committee has agreed and are currently reviewing the two proposals for the mobilization plan rewrites at this very moment. So Education SIG and the OSS CERT SIG are currently under review by the Governance Committee. So ideally, we'll get some feedback on those proposals and see if we can get any direction on how we're going to move forward with those. Any questions about that? Okey dokey. Do we have any other sub-project leads here that wanted to give an update on any of our SIGs or software projects?
Well, from the SKF team, we're actually very hard busy in working on the new stack, making good progress there. We're actually now in the stage to deploy what we have to Azure as well, and build a whole pipeline for it. So we have actually actions that we then can, automate the whole stuff, so we don't have to do it manually. Yeah, so moving forward there, so that's good. Other than that, same old.
Awesome. Thank you, Glenn. Any questions for Glenn about SKF progress? All right.
Some about the DE9 stuff.
Oh, please go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, we have the town hall this week. We've got a great outline we'll be looking at today during the SIG meeting. And then we have our talk that got picked up at the Open Summit. I think we're going to submit as well for OpenSSF Day. Either way, we got a lot of stuff to prepare for. Also, at the same time, Nicole and our subcommittee put together this outstanding, I don't even know what to call it, database, or basically it's first of its kind, where we have a consolidated list of global efforts around DE&I education, in addition to looking at who's supporting these efforts, so we can drill down even further what kind of support we should be looking for, asking for, what should we stay away from, right? There's so much data here that we can use to nail down and have a pinpoint effort into what we're trying to do. That it's amazing. So a lot of great stuff happening in the subcommittee. There's also a couple of proposals out for an even larger effort, but there's more to come on that. So yeah, exciting times over the next couple of months.
Excellent. If anyone is curious about what the DE&I group is working on, they actually meet at the top of the next hour. So join us there. Any questions for Jay about the town hall, the talks, anything around our DE&I education efforts? All right. Thank you for sharing. Did Joran join us? All right, so let's shuffle around. We'll talk about wrong secrets in a little bit. We have our new friend Nell here, so we'll let Nell talk all about the proposal about potentially creating a new SIG.
Ooh, yes. And can I have, oh, wait, nope, I already have permission to share. Score.
Little green button.
All right, cool. So let me just shuffle windows slightly, bring this thing up. You can do it, computer. There we go. And let me share the correct screen. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Good, very early morning here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's good to be here. This is a proposal to create a memory safety SIG nestled under the wings of the Developer Best Practices Working Group. So we have met three or four times, I think it's three, as we've been putting this group together. And last meeting, Jay White, who's also in this meeting, very helpfully helped us nail down a bit of what we wanted to do through defining a vision, a mission, scope and purpose, and some initial goals. Our vision, this is our big overarching, pie in the sky thing, is to eliminate memory safety vulnerabilities in open source software. If we could achieve that, that would be amazing. But looking at our mission, which is a little more targeted and a little more pragmatic, our mission is to understand and reduce memory safety vulnerabilities in open source software. And our scope/purpose, how we'd like to achieve that mission and maybe someday ultimately that vision, is to develop pragmatic guidance, standards, and software to reduce memory safety issues. I emphasize pragmatic because it seems like anytime we talk about memory safety or improving memory safety, some people on Twitter take that as, oh, we should rewrite the entire world in Rust. And that's not, well, it's not pragmatic. It's also not a responsible thing, I think, but that'd be lovely, but it's not based in reality. So we want to develop that pragmatic guidance, standards, and software. This will sometimes involve rewrites. This will sometimes involve, if you are locked into a language like C++, using language features that improve memory safety, even if they don't guarantee it, but also identifying where it is worth it to rewrite in a memory safe language. We advocate for such changes is certainly part of our purpose. And then systematically reduce memory safety vulnerabilities in ways informed by real world data and risks. There have been some research done on memory safety, and the Microsoft a few years ago put out a study saying that, of the issues that they assigned CVEs to, 80% were memory safety related and likely could have been prevented by using a memory safe language. So we'd like to access more real world data. I'm the editor of This Week in Rust. Again, we're not advocating solely for Rust or solely for any one language, but there's a lot of research out there about the data around memory safety and the risks of it. And our initial goals, and C-Rob alluded to a little bit of this earlier, is to update the language of Stream 4 of the Open Source Security Mobilization Plan. I was involved in the drafting of that, and that was drafted very, very, very fast. And we would like to update that, again, based on real-world data and risks and pragmatic guidance, and then identify and recommend specific initiatives for funding by the OpenSSF and its members. We might recommend something within the Rust Foundation to be funded. We might recommend, I know C++ World is working on profiles, which a user could use a memory safe profile with their C++ code and do it in a more memory safe way. There's initiatives in Go, there's initiatives in plenty of other languages. We'd like to identify and recommend specific ones that we think would produce the most value for the open source ecosystem, again, based on that real world data and risks. And that is it. I will stop sharing. There we go. And happy to answer any questions.
Please. So group, what questions do we have for Nell? Whether it's about the mobilization plan or this proposal. Don't everybody talk at once. It's hard to understand you.
Still the daylight savings time jet lag.
It's an ambitious goal, obviously, but there's nothing wrong with the proposal otherwise.
To turn the request on its head a little bit, is anyone very inspired and excited and want to collaborate on this effort?
Good question.
I believe there are a few of us that are already attending a lot of these, attending these meetings. I know I'm one of them. I'm very interested, and more from a learning perspective, right? So I'll say that. So not only who's interested in collaborating, but who's interested in learning more and helping to push as part of the mobilization plan and as part of, basic efforts just to solve for a lot of the vulnerabilities that are that are generated or exploited because of the lack of use of memory safe languages. That would be interested to understand as well. I'm involved because I want to learn.
We currently have a few Microsofties. We also have someone from MITRE, someone from ISRG. We have a consultant who works with CISA, though it has made very clear they are not representing CISA, and a few other orgs, and the more perspectives, the better.
Yeah, I definitely want to kind of jump in even just for the learning opportunities. I wanted to attend the calls, and just like the timing was always a little off, but I'll try to make it to some of the meetings.
Awesome. Our meetings are on the community calendar. We normally meet every other Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. We are skipping this week's meeting, though, because it conflicts with the town hall.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But we
I've been
love to have you
watching the
there.
videos too, so that's
Oh,
good.
cool.
Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had any links to research about the overlap between memory safety and like where memory safety issues have been at the or have enabled kind of like the vulnerabilities that or have been overlapping with that area of vulnerabilities. I mean, is it's just not an area that I've looked at before. So I was just wondering if you had more information you could share.
Sure. I'll put some links in the chat. One is a report from Microsoft. That's just one I have off the top of my head. There's been a few other reports as well, which I'll definitely be researching and bringing in.
Jay.
Yeah, one question. Do you plan on presenting this to another working group as a proposal to be part of? Basically, are there competing? Are you forcing competition between working groups for this particular SIG?
Not right now. We had considered the secure code working group as potentially a fit, but I think this one would be a much better fit because of the emphasis on developer practices.
Okay, so this is the only working group that you're presenting this to. That's great information for Crow to know. Thank you.
The more you know. Thomas.
Hi, hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Very interesting proposal. So I was wondering, so there was now for about a month ago, so we also started this activity around the C and C++ compiler flag hardening guide, which also touches upon memory safety issues, but maybe from a little bit of like a narrower scope. So I was wondering a little bit around like possible sort of synergies. So it's like this sort of, so it a little bit sounded to me that your focus is more on like these memory safe languages. And I was sort of wondering how this sort of activities around compiler flags for C++ sort of fits into this. So is that something that possibly has synergies, or is it a little bit on the sort of like the side?
It absolutely has synergies. In fact, I was looking at that SIG. I almost said WIG because I was conflating working group and SIG. I was looking at that SIG yesterday, and there's definitely some overlap. They are focusing narrowly on C and C++ compiler flags, which is great. And I do think maybe not overlap, but there definitely will be things that we can work on together around that. So yes, there are synergistic synergies, certainly.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. And Thomas actually is helping lead that little project.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I think we have our calls every second week on Wednesdays this time. So
Tomorrow.
Also feel free to, tomorrow. Yes, exactly. Feel free to join and discuss more there. Thank you.
Sounds awesome.
Any additional comments or feedback or desire to express your interest in participating?
So I have a question. I mean, if I didn't misunderstand, I mean, you talked about asking for some funding for this activity.
We would like to identify specific projects or initiatives related to improving memory safety in open source security, and then recommend those for funding by the OpenSSF or by OpenSSF members. We're not requesting funding directly at this time.
For the SIG itself, okay.
Correct.
I get it. So that means at this point, you have no idea how much that would be, because you're going to have to. That would be part of the outcome of the SIG would be to figure this out.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any additional comments or feedback for Nell?
if I may, real quick.
Of course you may, sir.
All right, thank you.
The chair recognizes Dr. Wheeler.
All right. Oh,
I'm not that guy.
Oh man! Whenever one uses my title, I know I'm getting my chain pulled. Yeah. So there is a project called Proximo, which is kind of a meta project of various efforts. I know you know about this now, but it's more of the other folks here on implementing some very important tasks in memory of the safe. I think all the Proximo ones are Rust specifically, but the idea is to re-implement certain functionalities in a memory safe language. So it's quite plausible that one outcome might be to propose fundings for certain projects within that. But that's just a possibility that's for this SIG to propose.
Any additional comments or feedback? Well, because I'm a glutton for punishment and the internet hates me, I will create an issue for all the working group members to formally vote on adopting this effort as a SIG that we want to collaborate on and contribute to. So I will get that put together, and the meetings will commence shortly after that. So anyone that is listed in our working group governance section as a maintainer, collaborator, or contributor is able to formally eligible to vote. And anyone else is interested to provide us feedback from the internet, which is always great. Good time. So look for that. I can do that this afternoon. So I will shoot an email to the mailing list and then ping on Slack. And I would encourage everyone to, if you could share that presentation now, and if you have any links to any existing notes or any other artifacts, that would be very useful. I'll put those in the issue. And we will give until our next call, which would be on the 28th, time for members to review that and express their support or their counter opinions. It'll be an experience that'll change your life, let me tell you.
Let me ask, I mean, does anybody have any concern with this? It seems like it shouldn't be controversial, but hey, we've seen.
That's what I thought last time.
I know. I knew you were going to say that, but in this case, I really don't think so. But it'd be nice to hear it now if anybody has some concerns, rather than going to create some anonymous GitHub account and start flaming the issues. Not that we would ever see this kind of behavior.
Never. All right, so I'll do that later today and get that out. David, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just I'm enthusiastic if that helps. So
yeah, I personally think it's a great idea. I love supporting kind of the strategic vision of the foundation, and I think this is a definite opportunity to help improve the whole ecosystem by eliminating a whole class of issues. Wouldn't that be great? Less work in the future.
Eliminating is like really, really ambitious. I think reducing would be already a step forward we could claim victory for.
I'm thinking about the days when we have silver spacesuits and flying cars, man. It's gonna be great.
All right. Good.
All right. Well, thank you, Nell. If you have any questions in the interim, feel free to continue the conversation in our Slack and look for that issue. And I look for members to express their opinions shortly.
Thank you very much. And great to meet those of you who I haven't met before.
It's always nice to meet new friends. All right. I don't see Jaren here. So Dan, would you like to talk about the W3C joint workshop?
Sure. Okay. Let me see if I can bring up share my screen. Yeah, okay, great. So a few of us have been working on the idea of doing a kind of workshop jointly run between these organizations here. So OpenSSF, W3C, OWASP, and OpenJS in particular. And so we have, I've been working with people, Probe is one of them, Jory as well from Linux Foundation, and some other folks. Arnaud as well has been roped into this. Thank you for your time. But the idea is to W3C. I have a background working in W3C, and I co-chair there a group called the Technical Architecture Group, which is kind of one of the leadership groups in W3C. And every so often, the W3C works on things that are like these workshops, which bring together communities, potentially people who haven't talked to each other before, to think about new work, or to come together and have a meeting of the minds. Very often workshops are used as a way to kick off new work, like new working groups, or it could be new interest groups. Many of the efforts that I've been involved in W3C have started with a workshop. We've also used workshops as a way to bring communities together. So in the work that I was involved in the immersive web, for instance, we had a workshop where we brought in content and game and application developers to come and talk to the people who are building the specs, and talk and have a sharing of concerns there. And that can also be helpful. So the purpose of the idea behind this workshop, we've got like different strands of things. It's focusing on web developers, right? And the needs of web developers and how those are different possibly from the needs of developers in other areas. And or specifically thinking about the needs of web developers. And there's a kind of lack of communication, I think, going on in the web developer community about the good work that is happening here and in other places around software supply chain. At the same time, there's a lot of exciting new specifications that are coming out of W3C that are intended to secure things more, but there's a lot of there's a lack of understanding of how to use those. There's also there's a very kind of heterogeneous development environment on the web, which is which includes a lot of frameworks and libraries and this sort of thing. And so how web developers develop is very different depending on which framework they're using or which library, or whether they're doing bare HTML. So all of those issues kind of come together in a crisis, which is that the situation for security on the web is not that great. And it's also one of the platforms where you can, you're very often subject to security issues because you can just be phished and find yourself on a website that looks like your bank. And before you know it, you've clicked on a link, and that may be enough user activation in order to enable some kind of advanced API that's going to start sucking your personal details away, getting at your location, down even as a vector for malware. So anyway, the point of this, we're going to try and run this workshop in London, June 7th and 8th. We've got people from all these different groups involved. We'll run it under W3C rules, but it will definitely be run as a kind of a joint workshop. And right now, we're kind of working this week to finalize the CFP. The CFP will hopefully, it's not covered in here right now because it's still in a PR, but I think what we're going to be looking at is opening up the CFP and then looking for papers by the end of April, basically. And then we'll have a review process, and then we'll run this workshop in the reactor space in Microsoft. Actually, the Microsoft Reactor London has told us that they're happy to host it. So anyway, that's the current state. We're still looking also for sponsors for food. So even though we have a sponsor in the form of Microsoft Reactor for the space, we are looking for sponsors for food. So that's the current state of things, and I hope to. It's not the CFP has not been launched yet. We hope that to happen by the end of this week or possibly early next week, and so that we give people enough time to write input papers for this. So that's it.
You have a couple of questions in the chat, Dan.
The workshop, we are going to try to enable some kind of remote participation. It's something that I've asked. Certainly, we have done hybrid workshops in the past in W3C. You know, there's this, even before pre-pandemic, there's been the facility to join remotely. Of course, it's more because part of the workshop agenda will be unconference. It'll be more possible to participate in the kind of like presentation stuff and Q&A versus the unconference sessions, which are going to be a little bit more necessarily chaotic. But there will be some form of remote participation available. That's for sure.
And then Marta's question: Do you think we'll be able to do any recording of any of it and share that afterwards?
I think we should be able to. It was something that was asked, and I asked the venue, and I don't know, but let me find out, and I will put that to the group, and we'll see if we can do it.
I think if we can enable remote participation, we should be able to do the recording of that.
Yeah, exactly. We should be able to do just as a Zoom recording, so something like that. Yeah.
Any additional questions or feedback for Dan on the workshop? Well, I, for one, am very excited to see this come together. We've been talking about it since many of us met in Dublin last fall. I think this is some worthwhile work. We can add some value to that community.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I will share the URL, the final URL for the workshop CFP when it's launched in the Slack, and I'll share it on the mailing list as well if I can figure out how to send email.
And I think you definitely should share it with Glenn, who knows a thing or two about web application security.
Yeah, that would be nice. I would love to read it, actually. Yeah.
Excellent.
Cool,
Let us move on to Jonathan. You have it open for us.
I do. So I spent some. I don't remember if I sent this over the email group, but there is a document, quite short. It's a proposal for a section to get added to the best practices guide for open source about how to handle vendor dependencies with respect to CVEs. It's linked in the meeting notes. I will also post a link to it in the Zoom. Did I send this into the working group email?
I think we talked about it in the vulnerability group. I don't know that we talked about it here yet. Have we? Anyone recall? It all kind of blends together. We're all one big happy family.
Okay. Anyways, it's quite short. I could just read it and see if anybody has any comments or concerns before we try to turn it into a pull request. Yeah. All right. Let's just do that real fast. All right. Now I've lost the link. Great. Okay. A vendor dependency is any dependency that can't be directly updated by the end user. It is considered best practice when updating a vendor dependency in order to fix a vulnerability. The project issues their own disclosure of that vulnerability. The project should also assign the existing CVE ID of the affected package to their product. The impact should be assessed and communicated in the context of the project's use of that dependency. Finally, reach out to the CNA for the original vulnerability to add the project's advisory to the list of links. Short, sweet, to the point. Does that make sense in the context of open source maintenance and maintainership?
What do we think, fam?
Bueller?
I'll start. Personally, I think it's a good idea to have some guidance on. I'm not in love with the term vendored, but I understand what you're going for. We might be able to find a better word, but because the first time we use this, a maintainer is going to say, "I'm not a vendor."
No, but you're vendoring. You may not be a vendor, but you are vendoring your dependencies, or repackaging your dependencies. I don't know, like maybe repackaging is the term to use.
Yeah, I agree with what Krebs said. I think that there's a lot. I mean, I just wrote a blog post on this. How people are like, some open source dependencies really bristle at the notion of being a.
Speaking about flame wars.
Yeah. The problem here is that the term vendor dependency is the only term I know of used for this situation.
Okay.
So
I had not heard it used in that context. I had, it's a third-party component from my perspective. Again, I like the idea. I think the guidance would be useful. I just, I'm tripped up by the word.
Yeah, it is.
I don't have a better suggestion.
It is the only other term that I can think of is repackaged dependency. But this is a very common, like, this terminology of vendor dependency. Like if you were to Google vendor dependency, this is what you would look for as a term to use. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the only term I know of. I mean, we can create our own term. If we do, I think I would still want, like, blah, paren, vendor dependency.
Yeah,
because
AKA.
AKA, because that's the only term I've ever heard used for this situation. And I have heard it a number of times.
Yeah. I could say when I worked at the hat company, I never once referred to that as this process. But again, I'm open to, if that is the parlance of the community, great. It just personally trips me up.
What's the term?
I understand it. It just took me a minute to kind of.
What's the term you used?
We didn't really have a term. It was.
I think it was verboten, frankly. There was, at least at Red Hat, there were for a very long time, it was specifically, "Thou shalt not do this," but I don't know if they used a different term.
Right. So this was this document was written as a collaboration between myself and Rodrigo, who works at the hat company.
Okay, so if Rodrigo is cool with it, I'm fine with that, because Rodrigo is my boy. Okay. Love me some Rodrigo.
Yeah, I mean, I if somebody can find another term, and I've certainly no trouble with using a different term. If we use a different term, then we should mention that some people call it this other thing, because, as I said, that's the only term I know of that's used for this situation.
Yeah, just like at first, we referred to this as third-party component management.
The problem is that also includes the situation where you're bringing in like a link, but you can replace it as a separate package and such, which is how a lot of distributors prefer trying to do it that way. It's just become harder and harder to do. I mean, Chrome's kind of notorious for this.
Well, the other reason that it's used, the term vendored, right, is at least in my experience with the Java ecosystem, when you're vendoring a dependency, you're usually repackaging that dependency and then changing the base package coordinates to be something else. So for example, when I was working for Gradle, we had, when you were building the artifact, a rule that would go and rewrite all of the vendor dependencies to be in a different, like they were now part of like org.gradle.internal.vendored or whatever. And like all the packages in the compiled source code would then point to that artifact that, or to that class file that was part of that vendored package name. Even though when you were looking at the code as a developer, it didn't look like you were vendoring a dependency, but in the compiled source code, or in the compiled bytecode, that's what it ended up being.
By the way, the verb is vendoring. So the process
Vendoring.
of doing
Yes.
vendoring, and the result is a vendor dependency.
Yes.
So
yes.
So, team, do we have any other opinions, or should Jonathan go ahead and submit the PR to update the guide, and then we can comment there?
I think that sounds good to me. I just wanted to have a clarification. So if there is a vulnerability in one of your dependencies and you make the assessment that it doesn't actually impact your product because you're not actually using that functionality, you're still supposed to do the disclosure and basically communicate the assessment that it doesn't concern your product.
See discussion about Vex.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Yeah, so yes. No, I mean,
All I'm saying is, I mean, if we put some wording about that in the best practice document, we ought to make it clear what we think people should do. Because if I'm a developer, I'm going to say, okay, what does that tell you? So let's be,
So if you want to be completely like, so if you want to reduce the likelihood of someone coming to you and saying, hey, does this vulnerability impact you? You're best off stating a negative or asserting a negative to state that it does not impact you, because then you've already stated it and you don't need to do it again for every person that comes to you. But it also depends upon how likely that is given how critical your project or how commonly used your project is, right? Like if when I work for Gradle, we'd regularly get emails from people saying, hey, this dependency that, you've got in this jar is flagging this vulnerability for us. How do we fix it? And the answer is, well, you gotta wait for an update. Sorry. Yeah.
Jay, you had a question or comment?
Yes. So well, I think Arnold went there with Vex. That can of worms can't be you can't close that can of worms fast enough. You can't close it enough. You can't. Oh God. Anyway, to that point though, I get the feeling that something like this can't be siloed here. There are frameworks that we're building across the OpenSSF that might benefit from understanding this a little bit more in detail. And I'm actually, so to be perfectly honest, I'm actually with Crow, and I'll say this because, having done third-party risk assessments over the last decade and a half, the idea of what we used to call them third-party binaries, right? Third-party binaries, third-party components, all that kind of stuff. So I'm with him with this, but that lends itself to this. I think this is an actual. I think this is an evolved thought to that, even because if I'm looking at what you're saying here, which I think is important, there's even a greater concern now to when you're doing an assessment of your packages to identify, hey, there's a component here that was given us by somebody else that now is at fault, and this could impact this project over here, but maybe it impacts a few others that are using the same damn. I mean, you know, so I think that what could be developed here should also be communicated across the spectrum and not just live in a guide here. I think that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it shouldn't just live in the guide here. I think that's something that can actually be communicated outwards to a lot of the other efforts that we're doing as well.
Yeah. I mean, the guide, yes, starting with it in the guide and saying, hey, this is a best practice for open source, and then communicating it to other other subparts of the OSSF is totally reasonable. But it needs to live somewhere. And it wasn't totally clear if this should live in the best practices guide or in the vulnerability disclosures working group. Like it kind of bridges both of those. I don't know. Crow, what do you think?
Well, it depends on the constituent we're trying to get to. So as you have it laid out here, we're trying to approach developers saying, hey, developers, this is a great thing. You should do it. And I think that would be appropriate for this group. Within the vulnerability disclosure working group, we might want to update our maintainer CVD guide to also reflect this if the group agrees. And so kind of hitting it in multiple places. So we're kind of using a one voice, so to speak, across the different efforts.
I agree.
Any additional comments or feedback for Jonathan? All right, I would strongly suggest open up a PR against the guide, put your proposed text in there, and give us a couple days to comment if there's anyone that has any additional thoughts. And then I think we're good to proceed. Yeah.
Will do.
Absolutely I have no objections to the intent and content. All right. Team, did Jaron ever pop in? Did not. So I will point you all to our Slack channel. We had a gentleman that is from OWASP that represents the Wrong Secrets Project. And it looks like that project is going through our awesome best practices badging process. And it looks like the team had a couple questions. So I would encourage us to reach out through the Slack channel and see what we can do to help answer those questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm lead the best practices badge project. So I would be delighted to help however I can.
Yeah, I thought so. It looks like they're going through, and they had done a substantial amount of work already, and they were mostly clean and green. A couple things here and there. So maybe they were just asking, maybe the project had questions about the couple areas where they weren't able to hit the perfect score.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any additional topics or comments we want to discuss as a group today? Okie dokie. Look for an awesome email and Slack communication about the proposal to create the new memory safety SIG. And also look for Jonathan's PR around vendoring. If anyone has any commentary or feedback, please put it in that issue and we'll get that reviewed and potentially merged here in the next couple days. And I would also suggest we probably should think about from the Vuln group how we might want to update our guide to reflect that as well. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time and attention. If anyone's excited about our education SIG DE&I efforts, we'll be meeting in about 10 minutes. So cheers. Enjoy the rest of your day. Look forward to talking to you, everybody, again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day.